Everyone, welcome to the Aussie Game Podcast, where we talk all things Australian football. My name's Chief. I'm joined as always by Mopper. How you going, Mopper? How's your weekend? What's going on?
Yeah, all good, mate. The Club World Championship kicked off today and plenty of news around town. It never seems to be boring in the world of football, that's for sure. Lots of exciting stuff to unveil today.
Yeah, let's rip right into it. Can't really start anywhere else, but the Socceroos qualifying for their sixth consecutive World Cup finals. They were heading into that last game against Saudi Arabia, needing to avoid a 5-0 deficit, and they came out with a 2-1 victory. So well and truly did enough to get through. And look, it's an amazing achievement. 6th World Cup in a row. What did you make of the match, mate?
Yeah, same challenges popped up, but I think it's recognisable and understandable now. Good to see, though, the resilience shown even when we went 1-0 down. Mitch Duke, as everyone's heard and seen, good little mini comeback, wasn't supposed to be there. Got to start, made the most of it, and great ball inside. Connor Metcalf, who struggled in that first game against Japan to hold the ball. It was good to see him drive forward, and I think he's taken a great opportunity there and scored that crucial goal, which I think, confidence wise, would have just shut down the opposition. And then obviously bang, 2-1 just after half time. We put them to the sword, and probably Saudi Arabia's got a lot of thinking to do with obviously their competition, a lot of superstars, and it's obviously having an immediate impact with their internationals and qualifying group. You would have thought they would have gone strength to strength, but it just goes to show strong competitions probably pushed them a lot of places out for these Saudi Arabian players, and they're probably going to find it difficult to transition and find that balance for their country.
Yeah, we're going to chat a little bit later about the different approaches, but let's just go through for the moment. Let's go through the first half. Saudi Arabia obviously scored in the 19th minute. Martin Boyle had a great chance a minute earlier to put the Socceroos up, and he squandered it, pushed it wide. So Saudi, obviously they did need to get those 5-goal turnaround against Australia, and when they scored in that 19th minute, got the crowd right into it. After they scored, didn't really kind of kick on with it. But then when Metcalf scored that goal from lovely Duke, little assist there, but it was on the back of some significant possession as well. So it was good signs. And then look, at halftime, I wrote some notes down about maintaining possession. They lacked a bit of an attacking threat. Duke looked a bit isolated, but the Metcalf goal before halftime was actually absolutely huge. So just I think it settled some nerves for the Socceroos going into that halftime break. And then obviously Juki popped up in the first minute of the second half. Great ball in from Martin Boyle, and then that flick on header. And look, from that point on, Saudi didn't really pose too many threats. I made a note here as well. The Guerrier tackle for the penalty, absolutely not a pen for me. Clearly got the ball, trailing leg might have picked up the player, but certainly shouldn't have been a pen. Even went to VAR, not overturned. So bit of a crazy one for me. Yeah, what did you make of how the Socceroos kicked on with it in the second half?
Oh, look, I think it changed perfection, didn't it? And obviously, it gave Popper some opportunity to change a few things around that second half, bringing on Toure, which you've noted as well. Great confidence. And again, Popper's experience in Asia has really played out now, considering we had so many injuries heading into this qualifying campaign. So I think it just settled it down a bit. Saudi Arabia had that little frantic few moments, got a little bit lucky. But again, we went back to that first game with Japan. The defense really stood up under pressure, and no matter what change or tactical change that he did, I think we look pretty comfortable without the ball. Again, the challenge is for us how we can maintain position in those moments. I think that's our biggest opportunity.
Yeah, I did note about Mohamed Toure coming on. I've been a big fan of him for quite a long time, and I was really pleased to see him in the squad first and foremost. But then to get him on at that time, it was pretty early. I think it was around the 65th minute, so still plenty of time for Saudi to get back into the game. But he was solid up there, and he posed a threat in terms of his physicality, his speed. there were a couple of times there where he got in behind or he had the opportunity to play in one of his teammates and he just kind of missed that final pass. But you can see lots of positive elements. And we know that striking position is one that we don't have a lot of strength in. We certainly don't have an out and out nine, a prolific goal scorer. So potentially he could be someone who's really going to push his case, but was very impressed with him when he came on. Great to see Yazbek get another shot. I thought he was really good in the second half against Japan. So great to see him start. And then Guerrier came in that back line. I'd say Sakati probably on the back of that ACL return, just lacking that match fitness. But Guerrier was solid there. And look, they were solid enough all across the pitch, and they did what they needed to do. They didn't push forward. They sat back. They didn't have all the possession, but they were pretty happy to play. They knew what they had to do, and look, they were pretty clinical when they needed to be as well.
Yeah, a couple of notes on Toure, 21 years of age, played 27 games in Europe for Randers, scored 7 goals. So a pretty good season under the belt for him at 21 to be in Europe and getting 7 goals. Their team's come fourth in the league. You've got the Copenhagen number 1 team over there, Midtjylland right behind them, and Brøndby and Randers, what Toure plays for. So good game time, good recognition, and great opportunity going forward.
Yeah, I think it also helps his younger brother Musa there at Randers with him as well as Paul Izzo, his Socceroos teammate, and yeah, sorry, another Aussie there as well. Forgot his name for the moment, but it'll come back to me later. But it's very good to have that kind of player come on. A young player that's going to show some. We know there's other players coming through. You got your Tommy Waddinghams at Portsmouth. You got your Noah Bodiches coming through. Archie Goodwins. You know that there's that next crop coming through. It's just probably who's going to put their hand up before the World Cup and put their stamp on that number 9 spot. So I suppose it's watch this space in the next 12 months as we prepare. But very pleasing to see Toure get those minutes.
Yeah, Oliver Jones, my friend, Oliver Jones.
Oliver Jones. Thanks, mate. Thanks,
That's
mate.
okay. My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
But I
It
think
was there. It was right there. I just
that's
couldn't
right
find
there.
it.
That's why we're a team. Honestly, with the Socceroos, Tony Popovic showing his Asian strength with the Wanderers and experience in there. Great campaign through some difficult challenges, transitioning from Arnold to Popovic. Super job. Japan, Saudi Arabia away from home. There were still question marks going to Saudi Arabia, even though the 4-goal difference. And again, they put us under pressure, but we managed to handle it. And that little bit of resilience in there off the ball is definitely there. It's now going forwards the opportunity and seeing some youth come through in the next 12 months gives them a great base to have a good look at. We've got some younger teams coming up later that we'll chat about. So, hats off to the squad. There's been a lot of players get some opportunities that we wouldn't have thought they would have got the chance, and they've taken it. And great job done, and 4 points and done on the way to America.
Absolutely, mate. And look, when you look back at the table and through the whole qualifying, and I'll run through the games in a sec, but we ended up being 4 points behind Japan and 6 points ahead of Saudi Arabia in third. So when you reflect back on how challenging the whole qualification process was. If you were to look at the table in solidarity, you'd say, well, no, not too bad, behind, not too far behind Japan and well clear of third, but it was anything but going through the whole qualification. So we started with a loss against Bahrain and then a draw against Indonesia. Those 2 results meant the end of Graham Arnold's time as Socceroos coach. Popovic came in with limited time to prepare for the China game. They had a shaky start. They went down 1-0, but then they came back, won 3-1 in that one. Japan 1-1, which you pointed out last week. Absolutely huge result when we go through. The 0-0 against Saudi, underwhelming game, but Saudi scored late. It was correctly overturned and ruled out, but that result could have been crucial as well. Bahrain, Cassini Yengi opened the scoring. Bahrain came back and leveled it at went up 2-1. And then Yengi scored a last-minute goal to make it 2-2. So, again, crucial point there. And then I think after that big break, we really got ourselves sorted out. Big 5-1 win against Indonesia. Again, shaky start, but got there in the end. And then comfortable 2-0 win over China. And then, of course, 1-0 over Japan and then 2-1 over Saudi. So look, all in all, you know, Popovic's time undefeated as Socceroos coach through
Yeah.
qualification. So as you said, his experience in Asia really came to the fore, and he guided us through that really, really well, and just did what he needed to do to get us through, I think. And now if he's going to expand his strategy, his style, now's the time to look at it before the World Cup. Now that we've got the monkey off the back, we've qualified, and we can look forward. All right, I want us to talk as well about the significance of the 6 qualification in a row. My probably first memory of the Socceroos qualification was the heartbreak in against Iran at the MCG, obviously, with the 2-2 draw. We thought we were there, and then I remember being with you actually when we were watching Uruguay and they got the job done in Montevideo over the Socceroos, and how heartbreaking that was. And I remember the feeling thinking, well, this is never going to happen. We're just never going to make the World Cup. And now, Aloisi's pen, 2005, and now that's 6 in a row. We're pushing into the territory of having qualified for more years in a row than we missed out for in the period before. So, what do you make of? It's never been easy as well, but we've done it and it's consistent and it's fantastic.
Yeah, look, Frank Lowy's made that massive shift when we took it so serious, and you've seen the absolute change from it. Like you said, though, every qualifications has its challenges, and so it should. It's the world's biggest game. You've seen the rise of Asia. You've seen us enter Asia from that moment in 2006, and obviously from that qualification onwards, everyone would have thought, yep, great, spots up for grabs. But Asia has grown. It's held a World Cup. You've seen the team's growth and development, and it's made a really challenging football landscape for Australia, especially from an economic point of view. But it has raised our game as well. And if we're looking at it, the overall long-term picture, we're going to have to do a hell of a lot more. It's not going to be easy, even with more teams in the competition. As you've seen in America, you've seen this was not a cakewalk, and Asian football is getting bigger and stronger, and we've seen it every 4 years get better and better and better. We've only won the Asia Cup once. We've been up there, but we've been knocked out by all different range of teams. And again, like I said with Saudi Arabia, they've got the balancing act now where you would have thought rise of a nation, and that you've seen international influx and the challenges that they now face, just like we do with trying to develop and economically and provide the right structure for the next cycle. But overall, 6 in a row after all that heartbreak, we've found our niche and our balance, but it's still going to be difficult going forward. And we can never underestimate how complicated and challenging it will be going forward as well, because even with the increase of teams, it will still be difficult if we don't produce and continue to produce youth level football that's going to be able to compete at that landscape as well.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And when we're going through this qualification, we avoided that extra lot of qualifying. The expanded World Cup certainly helps, but you make a great point that we need to keep developing and keep moving forward. You touched a little bit about the Saudi League and what that has done to their national team there before. It certainly has had an effect, particularly in the attacking parts of the game. When you bring in these superstars, your Benzemas, your Ronaldos, your Tonys, your Mitrovic's, that's only going to take spots from local Saudi talent. And, China do the same thing, right? When they developed the Chinese Super League, they brought in all these stars, and their national team is kind of nowhere now as well. We, as Australian league, we went through a little bit of that as well when we're bringing in these marquee players. And look, the landscape now doesn't allow us to do that. The clubs can't afford to bring in these marquee players. But I think it's having a really positive impact the other way in terms of
Yeah.
exposing. Touched on a few of those young Aussie strikers. If we were to bring in these marquee players, they would not be getting the game time, and they would not be getting these overseas opportunities, and they would not be pushing for these Socceroos spots. So you can look at it both ways, but I think we're in a much better situation to be able to push forward almost through just circumstance rather than any kind of planning, but we're there, and does provide us with a good springboard. We know these underage teams, how they're competing on the international stage, but I think in the end of the day, it's gonna benefit us.
Yeah, it's a fine balance, isn't it? Until we get the A League running, hopefully with 2 leagues up and down, like Japan and some of the stronger Asian nations. If you've like Saudi Arabia's only got that one focus, that one league, and I think that's their challenge. Not what I'm very concerned about it, but the Australia, I just you've got to be warned.
Doesn't keep me up at night, mate, that's for
No,
sure.
definitely not. But you got to be warned how we got there 4 years ago, penalty shootout. The 2 previous campaigns, went down to the wire as well. So, breath of fresh air getting through automatically, but it just reminds me every campaign how important it is to have it right and have the structures to start the campaign strong. Japan showed it. They're a bit of a blueprint in Asia. They're not the holy grail though. I think we've just got to find our own system because obviously you can't compare apples to apples. We've got to find what works for us. But there's definitely some learnings, and hopefully Popovich, now with the Socceroos, has 12 months to really gauge what level of footballers we've got underneath us as well and who hasn't been tried. And we'll see that in the next 12 months, no doubt. And it's going to be crucial, like I said last week, with what players go where and like we said with Toure, 27 games, Europe, seven goals, great little output there. Seems to be playing every week, in a competition that's fairly strong and a good start for a 21-year-old. That's a great leverage to just bounce off. So hopefully we can find more successful stories, and there's a lot of kids coming through that championships as we discussed. So yeah, hopefully the future is bright.
Yeah, look, I made a note here to kind of discuss where we are at in Asia, and you know, let's put Japan out in front, daylight second. But I really think we're at that level of your Koreas, your Irans, and look, we spoke about Saudi. There's clearly a drop off there in Saudi, and some of those other emerging nations. Not really sure where they're at, but coming into when we look to the next Asian Cup, we really should be competitive and right up there. And you made a great point about being knocked out by all different nations at
Yeah.
all different stages of the competition as well. So we really, since we've won it, we really haven't pushed anywhere near the final. We really should be up there challenging. And it's not like Japan's run away with it either. It tends to be other
Yeah, very
nations
true.
that have popped up and won it. So we really should be looking at that as a next opportunity to get some silverware for us.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, all right. So I think, look, credit to Popovich for what he's done with the Socceroos. It's great having these 12 months of preparation, and let's hope that he does what we need to do and looks for how he can start to expand that selection pool for himself as well. The win against Saudi also throws up the potential to go into pot two in the World Cup qualifying as well, or the World Cup draw. So that would be huge. If we
That's
were to get
massive.
drawn
Yeah.
in pot two,
Wow.
you'd really avoid some big nations. So look, it's going to, we have to be good and there's going to be quality all throughout. But to get that bit of that leg up would be absolutely massive. And that win does give us the opportunity to go into pot two, which would be great.
Yep.
All right, let's drop down a few age groups and talk about our underage national teams. We did run through the results last week, but since we recorded last week, there's been a couple more games. So the under 18s had a massive win, beating Uruguay 4-1. I'm going to touch a little bit on that a little bit later, but the under 20s, they lost 2-0 to Argentina following their 2-1 loss earlier in their campaign there. And the under 23s, after having 0-0 draw with Korea, beat Korea 2-0. So look, we won't spend too long on it. We did speak a lot on it last week, but lots of positives there. And look, the key is playing, but to beat a Uruguay 4-1 and some positive results in there is really pleasing.
Yeah, a couple of notes on there. I just made with Jetson Lopez made a double against Uruguay. young fellow that come through Sydney and Western Sydney Academy. He's been over in Braga. Before that, he was over with Victoria, and he's played 23 games in the last 12 months, and that was his first cap, and he scored a double. Also, Quinn McCall from Brisbane. Looks like Brisbane have got another one here. And an important to note on this young fellow, he's played under 17s 14 times and scored 14 goals for Australia. So to get
Mm,
that many caps for
quality work.
17s, yeah. And then
Yeah.
he's linked in, he's inked in with Brisbane Roar at the moment. Didn't get too much game time, so and a couple of games through NPL. So that'll be one to follow. And then
I think he actually
obviously,
got just on McNichol, I think he actually got more game time the season before.
yeah,
He was a
he
little bit frozen out under Zakovic, but look, hopefully he gets some more game time this season coming.
And then Medine Mamadi scored again against Uruguay as well. So Melbourne City, 18 games this year. What a great start to the season in 2024 for him, and scored 5 goals for Melbourne City. So that's some good game time for a 17-year-old for Melbourne City to recognise that one. So it looks like we've got a good bright future there as well. Obviously,
Yeah.
They lost against France and 3-0 and America 3-2. So what a great tournament to get some exposure. But there's a few little heads up on some of the 18s, some of the 20s. So, yeah, 2-0 and 2-1. So 2-1 was the first game. They just, obviously, Argentina. Let's look at Argentina, the most successful youth team in history. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so we're at 1-1. They scored a late goal for 2-1. It's kind of similar squad to the Asia squad. We were missing a few players, but not too many. And a few others got an opportunity. And then the second game, 2-0 against Argentina. Again, scored in 7th minute of injury time in the 45th of the first half, and then 90th minute. And the young gentleman that scored in both Argentina games is Sarko. So he's played 20 internationals at under 17 level for 5 goals. He's a Bayern Leverkusen striker, and he's played 32 games in the last couple of years in Argentine football. So I think there's a little superstar underneath that one, ready to start his campaign by Leverkusen. Obviously got the scouts out. But again, we mixed up both sides, but world youth champions Argentina. So got a great scouting network and academy process over there to really develop these youth league, and what exposure from the under-20s to get 2 incredible games against Argentina. So well done to all the boys who played, and a lot of minutes from both sides, a lot of changes in that first game and second game. So that was good to see everyone get some minutes. And the
Shows
23,
the shows
yeah,
sorry, just on the
no,
it
yeah,
shows the level we're at, right? Like, that we're competing. We didn't get, a point, not that it's pointed, but we didn't get a draw or a win out of that, but we're not far off, right? Like, and
definitely not.
you mentioned the quality of that Argentinian kid and the exposure he's getting, could be one of the next big things, and we're mixing it with these teams. So fantastic exposure, as you said.
Yeah, just be mindful. Jetson Lopez, a dual nationality with Chile. So
Of course he
watch.
is. Of course he is.
Just a little hint out to Popovich, yeah. Might
Cap him
want to
now. Cap him.
he might want to take advantage in the next 12 months, because dual nationality, and he's been in Portugal there for a couple of seasons. So
Hmm.
nothing wrong with a phone call or messenger or anything you want, but it might be an idea just to go hello. And obviously the 23 is getting some game time too. Some lot of A-League players in there, and so that's again to see every team playing, sensational. So just it's just great to see we're in all different levels around the globe, different competitions, different games, all different levels. So credit to Australian football for getting all these games on, because it's crucial. Like I said, if we can cap our Socceroos at around 10 to 20 games at youth level, then I think we're gonna get a great head start, especially with the amount of football that's been played around the world.
Yeah, like we spoke last time about the need to have these international windows and maximizing them because, all leagues, just about all leagues around the world have a break in these internationals, and there's no reason if we can't organise a game, obviously games are ideal, but if we can't organise a game, at least get the group together, get them training, playing, these internal games, whatever you need to do. But there's plenty of other teams, national teams that are gonna be looking for games or club teams that having the time off while their internationals are off. So there's plenty of opportunity, and let's hope we take advantage of it in all these FIFA international windows coming up the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, good shout out to Graham Cole, who made obviously played in the 23s. We haven't seen much of him in the Socceroos, but obviously getting some game time over there as well, which is good. He showed a lot of potential and talent in the last World Cup.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And look, his story at Newcastle as well. He's been in that academy squad. Scoring goals for fun almost, but I think that level is really beneath him, and he needs to. If he's not going to be able to push through, which is going to be really hard to crack that Newcastle team, but if he can't crack through it, a loan move or a permanent move away, I think will do him the world of good.
Definitely, definitely.
While we're talking about the under 18s, let's look at our. We're going to start to do a segment on our next gen Aussies, but I thought it was worth looking at our under 18s starting lineup versus Uruguay, and looking at actually where they're all playing. So Jai Ajanovic, he's at the Mariners. Pretty sure he's playing NPL level. They do have a couple of young keepers there at the Mariners anyway, with Prech Cullen and Pavlicic. So tough order to get in front of them, but good to see him on the books of the Mariners. The back line, as far as I could tell, would be Xavier Smith, who's at Crew Alexandra under 18s. Dylan Leonard had a breakout season with Western United. Lucas Harrington was one of those at the under 20 World Cup, but he's come play with the under 18s. So he's only 17, can obviously qualify for both, but he's come out this season at Brisbane Roar, and he has been linked to a move through to the MLS for a while now. It hasn't come to fruition, so not sure what's happening there. Leonard Finari at Cagliari, under 18s. Hay Neems, a lot of raps on Hay Neems coming through the Mariners. He had got some good game time this year, but the Mariners scored a goal, I believe, in the ACL Elite competition. Jetson Lopez, you mentioned before, scored that double. Max Anastasio Venezia under 17s. And then you mentioned Mamedi, Melbourne City. His Melbourne City teammate Lawrence Wong also played in that team, and those two really capitalised on Melbourne City's big injury toll halfway through the season. So there were a couple of those little breakout stars that really took advantage of those opportunities. Wong only 17, and Mamedi was it 19, 18? You said for him. So yeah, look, well, he must be 18. Under 18s. What am I talking about? um,
Absolutely.
and then Rylan Brownlee, who was at Brisbane Roar and is at the Crystal Palace under 18s now. So look, plenty of there. Look, when you look at that, they're either playing at, besides Ajanovic, they're either playing at their A-League club or they're on the books of a decent club over in Europe. So really positive signs for that group. Finally, while we're talking about our underage groups, a word on Brad Maloney, who resigned as the under-17s coach during the week. He obviously had a failed campaign for the Asian Cup, which doubles as the qualifier for the World Cup. So they weren't able to advance out of their group. They got pretty close. So, I think it came down to goal difference basically for them getting out of the group. But he probably would have taken them to the World Cup if they got through. But yeah, I spent a few years in that program, but probably time, considering they haven't qualified for the World Cup, to move on and give the next coach time to prepare for those next championships. So look, he's done a great job there, brought through plenty of talent. But yeah, watch this space, I suppose, for the next one coming through.
Yeah, it'd be a difficult role to identify who's who of football at that age group. You'd have to scout a lot of states to be able to understand who's who. So yeah, what a challenging role at 17s is to try to push through the leagues. And I think we seem to be progressing further on down the years. So obviously, he's had a massive part to do with that. So, well done for obviously his contribution, and yeah, look forward to the next space to see what Australian football is thinking in that area.
All right, let's move on to some confirmed transfers that have popped up during this week. We've had Zach Sapsford go from the Wanderers to Dundee United. Zach played as a 2 for the Wanderers with Brandon Borello during the season. Did have a few injuries, but when he was playing, plenty of energy, plenty of output for him, and pretty prolific in front of goals, to be honest, but also linked up really well with some of those wingers as well. So Dundee United apparently have been tracking him for a while, and he's off contract with the Wanderers, so no fee for that one, which is disappointing for the Wanderers, but great opportunity for Sapsford. Casey Boss was the next one, so he's really had a breakout season. Obviously, brother of Geordie Boss, probably he's sick of hearing that he's the brother of Geordie Boss and wants to stand out on his own, but he's been sold to Mainz in Germany, so straight into the Bundesliga. What an opportunity! 900K is the reported transfer fee. So nice little top up for victory for a player who's really only broken through last couple of seasons. But yeah, huge opportunity for Casey Boss, and the potential to have 4 Aussies in the Bundesliga if you count Connor Metcalf and Jackson Irvine at St. Pauli. What happens with Aaron Kunda at Bayern, we'll wait and see. But Casey Boss there, and there's actually plenty of players linked to St. Pauli as well. So we might even have more, but definitely you'd have 3 there in the Bundesliga, which is another great thing to promote. And the third big transfer of the week was Daniel Arzani, who's gone to Ferencváros in Hungary. My initial thoughts on this were, wow, that's a strange move. I'm not really sure about that one. But I wonder if being in the Champions League was a big pull for him. He's obviously, likely going to come up against some massive teams and massive opponents, and maybe he just wants to really test himself in that space. But yeah, when I saw that come up, when he was linked to other ones, I thought it's a strange one. But what do you make of those ones, mate?
Oh, look, I think Boss, wow, what it means. They come 6th last year. They got Conference League, so they're going to play plenty of games. So that might be an opportunity.
Mhm.
So a big statement, isn't it? Going to Mainz, but obviously backs himself, and obviously the club 900,000 to back him. So then they obviously see potential. So that could be a good story. Obviously, especially bouncing off the success they've had, Mainz getting into Europe. So that's credit to Boss on that one. So well done. Yeah, was it Hungarian league? Yeah, no, it's yeah. Look, I'm not.
I can see you so unconvinced by this one, but talk me through it, mate.
No, I just I suppose game time, you'd have to hopefully start over there. If he doesn't get a start over there, then geez, I'd be concerned. But yeah, definitely like the Champions League in the group or qualifying.
No, they finished first, so I think that's an automatic qualification to Champions League.
Okay, all right. No, wish him well. But look, you can't underestimate these leagues because, as I said, if we look at Denmark and all that, and those other leagues where Touré's gone and they're playing, I think if he gets 30 to 40 games, I think that's the most important thing for him. Yeah, forget about what league it is. Just get football and let's see if he can put it together for a good, strong 12-month campaign to test Popovich's thinking. I think that's probably in his thinking as well. He's got to go somewhere or he's got to play. Yeah, so that he thinks he's got the right balance. So I'm backing him.
I
So
think I think for Arzani, he could have easily stayed at Melbourne Victory for another 12 months and, had more than a decent season, but had a good season and been a good shot of the Socceroos. I
mm,
wonder if he has been criticised in the past. I wonder if he is to go over to a tough environment like that and succeed, I wonder if this could potentially be the making of a player like Arzani, because that has been the criticism of him. He went obviously broke out, Melbourne City, big move over to Celtic, didn't work out, has come back, went to MacArthur, didn't impress there, has gone to Victory, started pretty slow there, but then has kind of come good. So I wonder if that's potentially in his thinking, go into a tough environment and prove himself.
mm, definitely, definitely good point. Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? Like A League, you're kind of under the microscope. Over there, well, if he makes it, then we're going to hear about it, aren't we? So it's probably like I said. I think with his thinking, he's got to put 12 months together. And he's got to play to be on that microscope. And if they've got Champions League football, then and if he starts, wow, well, you know, there's no tougher environment, is there? Australians playing in the Champions League, and we'd love to see that. So, no, good luck. I'll be watching that club very closely, and yeah, especially in the Champions League stages to see if he can start, because that would be excellent for him to test himself. That's for sure. Because look, let's be honest, if he wants to make Socceroos side, going to be playing against the best of the best. So I think brave move, but only time will tell whether it's the right one. And yeah, we wish him well, and hopefully he does well.
I think it's really a sink or swim moment for Azani. He's
Yeah,
pushing up to that time of his career where he needs to either show that form when he was coming through at 18 wasn't just a flash in the pan. What, he must be 25 now, and really hasn't kicked on from that point. So he
yeah, brave move, but we wish him well. So hopefully he can kick on.
absolutely, mate. All right, I just wanted to also touch on some of the signings of two clubs in the A-League this week, being Sydney FC and Melbourne City. Let's first start with Sydney FC. Now, they've signed 16-year-old Akol Akon, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, for 3 years. So he's come across from the Wanderers and really highly rated, apparently one of the best strikers in Australia, apparently. And 19-year-old, again, Wataru Kamijo. So he was already on the books of Sydney FC, but they've extended him for 4 years. So they did that in the space of a few days. And then Melbourne City, they've extended the contract of 19-year-old Max Caputo for another 3 seasons. And a few weeks back, just after they won the A-League, I believe, they extended Alessandro Lapane, who's 21 years old, for another 3 years. Now, the A-League has been known for almost these rolling 12-month contracts for years and years and years, particularly young players, not giving them any kind of confidence or assurances that they're going to be there long term. And so I think the mindset of Australian clubs is really shifting now. So that these talented players who are going to clubs in Europe, and there's no compensation whatsoever for these A-League clubs. You saw last season Archie Goodwin sign a 5-year deal, and just what it did for his confidence. But locking these players up long term actually gives them the opportunity not just to give the confidence to the player, but if they're as good as they think they're going to be, it's the sell on, it's the transfer fee, and it's the getting the compensation for them.
Yeah, you've hit one of my passionate topics right on the head. Because they need the money to reinvest. You've seen in the last 12 months, well, it's not just the last 12 months, but you've seen over time the lack of finance, and you can see it in the league with unable to attract and salary cap restrictions. It's the only way. It's the only way.
It's the football economy, though.
Exactly.
It's what
And
every other country in the world does.
yeah, and look, we don't look. I'm not a professional. I don't know the ins and outs of contracts and the reasons why. So it could be players, it could be managers, it could be anything. But yeah, clubs have got to hold strong on this, because we can't see players go for nothing and go overseas in Europe and be successful so easily without getting some type of compensation. And this goes back to the beginning. It's the hard point, isn't it, for the young players coming through, because where's the contract sit in with these academies, and without a second league, without a proper youth setup, it's just a little bit of a grey area, which has allowed this loophole to happen, and clubs just diving in, trying to get and retain whatever they can get without thinking of the long-term game. But you're probably, with those significant things that have happened in the last couple of years, with players leaving for free and pushing on, and obviously signing for clubs and not making any money, and A-League's trying to generate money and the clubs are trying to generate money. So they've got to get that reinvestment back so they can start again and keep doing the same thing. As you said, it's the football economy. It's the way we've got to develop and then get the best out of it and get the money. Like, we might say, wow, 900,000 for Boss for Mains, but he's gone to European club in Europe.
It's
But,
nothing for Mainz, right? Like that's the
no,
key. It's
no,
it's a drop in the water for them. Like
yeah,
it's drop in the ocean. Like it's nothing for them. It's huge for the A-League club.
Yeah.
So, like, let's be realistic about that part. Yeah.
Well, 900 out of 2.5, it's it's more than a third of your salary cap. There you go. Like, well, what can I put that to? A marquee or tying some more younger players up, or pushing the boundaries of some of the roles that we can play. So it just goes on and on. Reinvestment in the facilities. It's just if once we get this right as a nation, forget about just the A League as a nation. I think we'll grow even faster because then that money will be used for the right reason. And it's the big one we have to get right in the future for our long-term jeopardy.
And I think the thing is that there's actually particular European clubs that are now identifying Australian talent. It seems like anytime
Absolutely.
someone
Yeah.
comes up, Portsmouth as an example is linked
Yeah.
because they've already pulled in, your Matthews, your Waddinghams, your Farrells. They've already
Yep.
done that.
Yep.
So and then Youngie before that, I know they've released him now, but they've already identified that I can get this player really cheap and bring them in, and they're as good as X player from Europe, for example. So these clubs are cottoning on to the fact that there is talent here in Australia good enough
Yeah.
to go straight into their squads and compete. One point I want to make on the contract, and it kind of contradicts my other point, but the advantage that these bigger clubs have is they can afford. You look at the 3-year, 4-year, 3-year extensions. They can afford to get the odd one wrong, where they've identified a player and they don't quite make it through. When you look at smaller clubs, Mariners, classic example, Jets, probably similar. They can't really afford to get these ones wrong. Not too many of them anyway, because it puts them under a whole heap of financial pressure. If they were to lock up someone for 5 years and then not being flop, that's where they're going to get put under pressure. So that's certainly where you likes of Sydney and the two bigger Melbourne clubs, Western Sydney Wanderers. Adelaide has done well, but their scouting is really good as well. And that's where they can be different to these other smaller clubs.
And like we said, look, at the same age bracket, if the 20s are over there competing against Argentina, against players that are at Benfica, Bayer Leverkusen, you know what I mean? We're not that far off, then we're going to be able to maintain their age. So we've just seen that 8 out of that starting 11 are A-League players. They need to be locked up. They need to be signed. We need to put faith in them, and we need to be able to give them football. We probably need another show actually after this. It's
We'll just
the
roll
AFL.
24/7, mate.
Yeah, I think
We'll just
24/7. Yeah, and I reckon it's probably, but it's on everybody's mind. Yeah, and I've got no doubt it's on the A-League's mind as well, and every club, because it is a little bit of a gap that we've got. But hopefully by that, that first statement around longer term contracts, 1, 2, 3 years will be the start of more, and they identify those young talents quicker, and then they can still promote them. Like they're in a position of getting a bit of balance, aren't they? Like they want the best for those young players. I've got no doubt that that those kids that are there for 2 or 3 years, they'll want them to succeed in Europe and go on to be in Europe. No doubt, we all do, no matter who you support. So
Yep.
they just got a bit of a position of power to be able to negotiate something for their own club and get a return on them. That's the way it works. So, and no different to how the player works. They want to get a start. They want to play football in the A-League. That's the starting point, and show what they can do. And if they can make it in the 17s, 18s, 20s, 23s, bang. That next step's Europe, next step's Asia. You know what I mean? A lot of players skip in Asia though, don't you think? Like straight to Europe, like still think if J League's and I just go back to Ange and his footprint and his steps that he won't, and Muscat as well going forward. Like, are we missing a little bit of Asia? We're kind of skipping the J League. We don't think we're good enough. I don't know. Clubs not looking at just young Australians that. Just again, this is why I
Not
need
I mean, not a
another show.
Not a young Australian, but obviously Jason Gerry has moved to Yokohama F Marinos in
Yeah.
January, so that's one that's gone through there. I was just checking out the Socceroos lineup against Saudi Arabia and identifying the ones that actually haven't come through the A-League, just to show you the kind of the depth and the ability for these players. You know, Martin Boyle did not, Degenek obviously not, Burgess. So
Wow.
when you
Good
look at
point.
it when you look at it in that respect, there's and I'm sure that these overseas clubs are seeing this and saying, "Well, this is where they come from. Maybe we grab them first before they kick on from that next club when they're young." And, you know, Casey Boss is a perfect example, pretty raw,
Yeah.
but Mines has obviously looked at him and gone, "Well, he fits our system. He's
Yeah.
the type of profile we're looking for, and we think he could do a job." And 900K? No, that was our bonus for making the conference league. I don't know what it was, but you know, they can afford it, and they can afford to take the risk, so they're gonna do it.
Absolutely.
So so just on those clubs, looking at, you know, their ability to tie down that talent, Geordie Boss and Marco Tilio. Boss went for 2.3 million and Tilio went for 3.1
Mm.
million over the past 2 seasons. Sydney FC transferred Hayden Matthews to Portsmouth 2.7 mil and Jake Gerberdreich to St. Louis City in the MLS for 1.4 million. So you mentioned Asia, players skipping Asia and going to Europe. The MLS seems to be a place that some players are preferring to go to, whether that's the wages or whether that's they think that's a stepping stone to Europe. Not too sure, but there's definitely a few players that are ending up in the MLS as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if there's
Uh,
a market, if they're willing to pay, if there's a
well,
market.
I mean, REFPL, he played for MacArthur, and he's gone over to Real Salt Lake with Lockie Brook over there. But they obviously,
Mm.
again, see the talent, see the opportunity, and think they could make something of him. So, you know, they don't see the risk in it, and you know, it's a good little pay packet for Piol. So why not?
Mm, definitely.
We just want to touch on lastly, Emily Husband. Obviously, she successfully took the Mariners to win the A-League Women's Championship, and she's been installed as a Matilda's assistant coach under Joe Montemurro. So it won't be too long until he's picking his first Matilda's squad. So I'm sure we'll dissect that all. Saw Courtney Vine pop up with a goal this morning. So yeah, there's plenty of players in the mix for Joe Montemurro to consider in his first squad for the Matildas.
11 days, Chief. They've got Slovenia the 26th of June in a double. So 26th of June, 29th, Slovenia in Perth. And then they're playing Panama on the 5th of July and the 8th of July. And then they've got AFC Women's Championship group stage, 7th August, 10th August, and 13th August. So packed schedule for the Matildas. That's what have we got there? That's 7 games in the next couple of months. So, wow, they got he'll get a good look, and yeah, plenty of players will get some exposure, especially around those timelines. I'd say the league over in England would have started as well. I'm not sure where the USA league's at, but could see some local players and some young players get a good gig in those
No,
first couple of
the
friendlies.
US is in full swing over there. They're probably about mid-season, so they're right into it. So yeah, look, as you said, 11 days out. You'd think that that squad will be dropping sometime in this upcoming week. So we'll look forward to picking the bones out of that one next week.
Yeah, 7 games, 2 months. Good on them, and yeah, plenty of opportunities going forward for the Matildas, and got their little coaching structure getting all built. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, look, and it's going to be an interesting way to look at how Montemurro, firstly, who he selects, whether there's any kind of change in formation or philosophy, and I think we'll get a real good sense of that in these upcoming games.
Yeah.
All right, mate, that might do us for today. Thanks for your time. Good to chat all things Australian football with you, and yeah, I hope you have a good week.
Yeah, you too. Well, lots to talk about as again, every day of football's another 24 hours of football, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, thanks everyone for joining us on the Aussie Game podcast, and we hope to see you next time. But for now, enjoy your football.
Bye.